So we'll be talking about porting desktop ABP to mobile Safari here. And I'm glad to actually welcome to the stage a fellow colleague of mine at eyeo. His name is Toni Filio. And Toni works as software development engineer and test. And he's been with our company since 2020. So 5 years, out of which he spent most of his time actually working in the extensions team. And he's also been around for the entire MV3 transition journey. But recently, he also moved to the apps team. And Toni is generally super passionate about promoting a healthy testing culture in teams. So, because his philosophy is code without tests isn't complete code, is it? So, we will be hearing more on the journey behind AdBlock Plus for Safari's transition from Safari content blockers to manifest v3 web extensions on iOS. And Toni, join me on the stage. Curious to hear more on your challenges, what's worked, what hasn't worked. Let us know.
Thank you. Thank you. So yeah, as Caro mentioned, my specialty is on testing. But today I'm presenting a slightly different story, which is on the apps team. Okay, so this is where the story begins. What happened on April 17, 2025? Do you remember what you were doing that day? I don't, but Apple Store does remember what happened that day. So we had a couple before that date, let's say boring releases for the ABP app on iOS for Safari. Until, we released a major new version. So this is the story. What happened before that? So what happened before? So ABP version 2 on Safari was using content blocker. Okay, this one. So, content blocker in iOS, you can do that. You make an app that has an extension inside. It's built using Xcode, and it basically consists of a set of rules to block content in Safari. The blocking behaviors that the Safari content blocker offers is hiding elements, blocking loads, stripping cookies from requests. And this is an example of a bit of a JSON file. At the end, a content blocker, it's a big JSON file with many of those rules. But it has some limitations. For us, the main one was missing execution time. So for instance, we couldn't use snippets, which is running JavaScript code in a website to do, let's say, advanced or more advanced things than simply that rules cannot do. Or let's say we wanted to count what users do in a certain web page. This is something that cannot be done with content blocker. Another limitation that we were facing is that filter lists cannot be updated in the background, because those background updates are only allowed by iOS when there is a significant app usage, and this is something that we cannot control. It's an iOS. It's iOS that decides when that happens and when that doesn't. Also, users cannot be messaged. In the new version of the app, we do that by opening a new tab in Safari with certain information. For instance, if we detect that there are wrong settings, we have the ability to do that. We couldn't do that when we had the content blocker solution. Also, even if we were doing app updates, as you saw before, the boring ones, that doesn't guarantee that Safari will update and compile the new version of the filter lists included in that app update. we could say that they only happen by luck. And this luck is because it requires that the user decides to open the app. But since what we are talking here is about an app that provides an extension, that is something that we cannot count on users of doing that. So yeah, that was AdBlock Plus for Safari version 2. And then, what happened? So Safari web extensions appeared in the Apple ecosystem. And yeah, extensions can actually modify and enhance the capability of a browser. We all know Chromium-based and Firefox browsers that supported web extensions for a while, but this is when Safari added web extensions to support, first in macOS in 2020, then in iOS 2021. Interesting thing, the web extensions in Safari come with its own permission model. We will see a bit more about this point afterwards. So what we had here was an opportunity to overcome the content blocker limitations that I was describing before. And there was also the option to convert an existing web extension from another browser. And here I'm talking about AdBlock Plus for Chrome, for Firefox. So with all this context in mind, what we have here is the ABP desktop SDK. So a bit more context. The SDK was developed to support both Manifest v2 and Manifest v3. So that was happening on the extensions side. The SDK is an ad filtering SDK for web extensions. And it's almost a web extension, but without any UI. So what we have here is an example of a functional test where it shows how the SDK by itself can be used, in this case, to add a subscription. Okay, so we were using the Safari content blocker. Web extensions appeared on iOS, on macOS. We had this SDK that was already developed. So we thought, okay, let's use it. Let's use it in the app. But we find out that there were some other things to be done. We had to polyfill Safari. One reason was because the following Web Extensions API elements are not supported in Safari. So this is a list, a max number of dynamic rules. Okay, we need to know that. Or updating static rules. I mean, this is the main things. There was actually a bit more. So what we did was, okay, we take the browser object in Safari and we implement it ourselves. So with all these things in mind, we were able to start working on the version 3 of the app. In terms of testing, we decided to do two kinds of tests, unit tests. Unit tests written in Swift, which is the same language that the app is being written, either using XC test or Swift testing, which is a recent testing framework that appeared. And those unit tests run in an iOS simulator as part of the Xcode cloud pipeline. So those unit tests test specific parts of the app. But then we also wanted to add end-to-end tests, because those tests are written and executed from the point of view of the user. So it's like a user is actually tapping on the phone. They are written in Kotlin. They are using Appium to access the iOS simulator, and they run in a simulator in a GitLab CI pipeline, which is where we have our code base. An interesting fact here, for now we are using the shared macOS runners in GitLab, but soon we are planning to start using our own custom runners, because the GitLab shared runners have some limitations. For instance, the iOS simulator version is fixed. There we want to be able to test in different iOS versions. Also, to test some filter lists, we are using a local test server, but we need to use a special domain. We need to do domain redirection, and for that we need to edit the etc host file. This is not possible in the shared runners of GitLab. That's why we are going for a custom runner solution. So we built the app, we polyfilled Safari, we tested things, and then we learned something. So the first lesson that we learned was about iOS messaging. When a setting is changed in the app, we need to, let's say we enable the cookies filter list, for instance. We need to transfer the update from Swift to JavaScript, which is the extension running in Safari, or the instructions filter list. For some reason, messaging from Swift to JavaScript works on macOS, but not on iOS. So a workaround that we added was that the extension makes a request to the app every second, asking for which are the settings, and then the app is able to send a message back. Hopefully, at some point, this workaround can be dropped, but this is how things are for now. Another lesson that we learned, permissions. So DNR doesn't support element hiding, and because of that, users updating to the version 3 of the app need to allow element hiding permissions. This was a new thing, so what we decided was to add pop-ups to make that easier for the users. Otherwise, they would be very surprised. So those pop-ups are implemented as new tabs opening in Safari, hosted in our domain. And this is how the flow looks like. So the first screen is, yes, there are some extra permissions that need to be allowed. Then you see in the middle screen, there's this pop-up, allow for 1 day, always allow. Hopefully the user goes for always, otherwise they will experience the same thing the next day. And then another pop-up in the form of a tab in Safari shows, yes, you're all set. Now annoying ads are fully blocked. Okay, so we started with what happened that day, but what happened afterwards? version 3 of the app was released, what happened after? And here is the third lesson that we learned, the migration. Only a third of the users completed the migration. By the way, we are able to know that because now we can run code with the web extensions that was not possible in the content blogging. But yeah, only a third of the users completed that migration. And actually, some of them did only half of the migration. So they enabled the extension, but without giving it permissions to do element hiding. So they only get DNR, but not snippets, not element hiding. And on the top of that, we got some reviews of users very concerned, like why now this version is asking for outrageous permissions. Well, there's nothing much we can do here because those permissions come from iOS. So the first mitigation was, yes, a developer response, like, this is fine, don't worry, but still, this is something that when we thought, okay, let's use the web extensions, let's use web extensions instead of content blocking. This is something that we didn't anticipate, and we are still working on it. Finally, some references if you are interested. Articles from Apple about the content block, Safari Content Blogger, web extensions on iOS, and also what is unsupported from the web extensions elements in Safari. This is the story. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for the talk. And I'm really, when it's somebody actually works on Safari for web extensions to work on there. You mentioned that earlier that the extension, you don't know if your app is going to be processed by Safari or not when the filter updates or whatever updates comes for the block list package. And we are experiencing similar things on the private tab of Safari, especially for DNR. Can we figure out these things?
Sorry, I'm not sure I understood the question. Is it about the filter lists being updated in the Safari engine, or?
Yeah, in the Safari engine. You mentioned that compilation of those kind of things are really depending on the lock. And we are experiencing the similar thing on the Safari private tabs.
Yes. What we have been experiencing is that, so this is how things are at the moment. When we enable a new filter list, cookies or distractions, it takes a long time for that to be reflected in Safari, in iOS. Long time could be 1 minute or even more. So that's something that we want to further investigate. But when using when we did the move from Content Blocker to web extensions, that solved the issue of the filter lists. So with using the web extensions, in theory, what we have in Safari is the latest version always. We don't need the user to open the app for that to happen. So that is happening in Safari. What is, still a problem is that it takes quite a long time for Safari to render any changes regarding what affects the DNR.
Oh, nothing much changed for that.
Hi, great talk, super interesting. I'm curious, with such a big change, did you consider having a new SKU or listing when you were publishing the app, or did you really want to stick with updating the existing app to a new version?
Well, this is what we are doing, but sorry, the first part of the question was considering what?
So you have the app in the iOS App Store, and when you moved from version 2 to version 3, did you consider having like an entirely new listing in the App Store?
Sorry, what do you mean with entirely new listing?
Yeah.
So, for example, in Firefox, when we migrate from Zool to web extension, some extensions publish a separate extension, web extension only, and then later, when the legacy versions drop, they migrated that to the web extension as well. But first, you had two separate versions built with different technology.
Yes, I'm probably not the best person to answer that. As far as I know, we wanted to keep the existing users. That was the main goal. So that's why we didn't put a new
That makes sense.
listing. Yes. I learned a new word today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the talk. It is very close. Well, everything Apple related. It is very close to what we do. So I have a few notes. The first one is to the browser developers, probably, but this is a perfect example of what happens when DNR lacks cosmetic filters. So this is the feedback that we will be getting for asking for permissions. And it would be great if you just all work on DNR having cosmetic rule support. I know that we're waiting for Apple there, that they promised us some kind of something, but well, anyways. And then the other thing, well, and this is, by the way, the reason why Edgar, the iOS app, still has not moved from content blocking API. Yeah, all the problems you said, they are legit, but we're scared of all the people will migrating. Migrating will be a disaster. Then regarding the question about that it takes a lot of time to update DNR rules, I suggest you to look to use this Xcode instruments and look for the process called content blocker loader. The thing is that DNR rules internally are converted to content blocking rules, and they go through the same pipeline. And sometimes it may take a lot of time to compile. A little anecdote from our life. We recently changed the way we convert our rule patterns to regular expressions, and it reduced the compilation time 5 times. So it was taking like 30 seconds or something like that, and it became for 5 seconds. Just like a small little change in regular expressions. And probably if you have a lot of regular expression rules in your API, think about that. Maybe you need to change the patterns, and it will improve the performance, the compilation time. Finally, the last thing. You can use this instruments thing, Xcode instruments, to also profile Apple's code. So it will be actually visible to you what exactly takes so much time. So that's it.
Sorry, is it possible that you wrote an article about these optimizations?
Yes, we did, but it is specific to our case. But yeah, we did. If you take a look at the release notes in some of our versions, and also our Safari-related code is open source, but it's in Swift. But anyway, so it can be found.
I remember in the team reading that AdGuard article, and that is what triggered. Okay, maybe there is a way to make it way faster.
There's a way to troubleshoot it at least to figure out what's the problem.
rules. Hey, thank you for the talk. I think every web extension development can really relate to all the situations to witness on Safari. And I was wondering, how do you handle this very rapid pace in which Safari APIs are changing? Because they're catching up with the standards. It seems like with every minor iOS release, and more things are fixed. But in our experience, we noticed that if we try to utilize those fixes, we have to alienate a fragment of a population that is using older versions of iOS, which is basically we have to cut people off from updates because they haven't updated their devices yet. That's most problematic with the DNR not being the same on all platforms. On Safari, I would say this was almost indirect, and we first had to translate the rules, and I guess you had to do the same. But how you even managed to decide how to deliver this to the right portion of population?
Yeah. Well, to start with, at the moment, we officially support iOS 18 and iOS 26. So that's...
Annual support.
Yes. Then when it's about the Swift part, we can always add a conditional if iOS 26 or above this, otherwise that. On the SDK side, which is JavaScript, yeah, it's a bit more. So at the end, whatever we support, we need to stick with that, and only when we bump a version, then maybe improve things. So yeah, it's tricky. Yeah,
sure. And I really know what you mean.
Okay. We are shortly before the lunch break, so I would encourage to have more questions at that point. Thank you, Toni. This was very interesting. Led to very fruitful feedback.